So John, listen, it's fantastic to see you over here on this side of the pond, and our paths crossed a number of months ago when you read the book Falling Stars, and Rising Stars as well, which I know you're going to give a brilliant review to with PILOT.IE. But I found your recollections of the era that we're talking about very, very interesting, and you have a, I suppose, fairly unique connection to the 1958 loss of the KLM airliner, the Hugo de Groot. So do you want to tell us about that and what you were doing at the time?
Well, my uncle, just to start with, he was a meteorological officer in Shannon. And we didn't know, he used to produce these forms, you can have a look at that. But in any event, that's just the beginning of it. But he, as when we were kids, he got us, he took me around to the hotels, to get us work, to get jobs. And he got me, my first job was in the National Hotel in Limerick as a porter bellboy. The following year he came again. This time he took me to the Cruises Hotel and got me a job in the Cruises Hotel. So we used to see movie stars. We'd see that a lot of people were flying to Shannon for overnight. And we would see all the Americans. The Americans would all start coming in the summertime. And as many others, the British as well, but mostly Americans. And then one night, I was on night duty. And there was a talk in the hotel that there was this group of Dutch farmers who were stopping in, or I wasn't quite sure whether they had stayed in the hotel, but I saw them in the lounge, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning or so. I was on duty on my own, and they were obviously, the story that we heard was that there were a group of Dutch farmers heading to the United States on vacation, and they seemed like any other group. I really don't remember seeing too many women, but I could have been wrong there in that group. But they were in the lounge. I don't even recall whether they were drinking or not, but they were all happy and chatting and having fun, getting ready, waiting for their bus to Shannon Airport. And I was standing there in case they needed anything in my little cubicle in the hallway. And anyway, at some point, of course this was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, one of the staff girls was vacuuming the lounge. Now I would say maybe 20 to 30 people, maybe. Certainly not more than that. In any event, this girl had the Hoover, as we called him back then. They still call it Hoover. And she was trying to do her job with all these people sitting around waiting for the bus and having a great time and chatting away. And she kind of said, "This is not working." And so she pulled the plug on the vacuum cleaner and left it there and took off. She said, "Be back when they were gone." And so anyway, one of the group picks up this long flex that was lying across the lounge, and he makes a hangman's noose out of it. The only hangman's noose I ever saw was in the cowboy movies, but this was a fairly perfectly made hangman's noose out of this long flex. And he goes out to the lobby, and they had these glass cases, show display cases. He hangs this noose up on the corner of the glass case. Now I'm watching this from the lobby, and I thought to myself, "Hey, this is not something I would be doing if I was getting on a plane." Me, just a young fella at that time, knowing as little as I did, or as whatever.
Pretty strange.
Yeah, and he pins a little note on the noose, And I don't recall whether, it must have been in English, otherwise I wouldn't have known. But the words I recall were, anybody wants to end it now.
Wow.
And we just left it there, went back to his thing, to his group. It was a joke, obviously. And their bus arrived shortly thereafter, and they all got on the bus and headed out to Shannon Airport. And a couple of hours later, we heard that the plane had crashed. And I'll never forget that scene. I'll never forget that noose hanging on that corner of that glass case. I kind of, even at that young age, I was only 12 at the time.
Yeah, so the sort of thing that would be permanent in your memory forever.
Exactly, and not something you should be doing when you're getting up on a plane, you know. And that was the story then. And for years, for decades, obviously, every now and again, under certain circumstances, I would tell that story, you know. And 60 years later, to the day, the year, I should say, my cousin, her name was Patsy, was visiting. She lived in New York. She would be the oldest one of all of our generation. Super beautiful lady, beautiful human being. She came to the West Coast for a wedding and decided to pay us a visit in California. And we entertained her, took her out to dinner, and one night, we'd been out to dinner, my wife Veronica and Patsy and I, and we came back home, and we're sitting there chatting, you know, maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and my wife says, okay, I'm going to bed. And she leaves the two sitting there talking. And we're talking about anything and everything. And then, totally out of the blue, she says to me, John, I have to tell you something. Says our Uncle John, who was a meteorological officer on duty, and she didn't know anything about my experience in the hotel or anything. She didn't know anything about that. She tells me he was on duty, that he had sworn her to secrecy, never to mention this to anybody. And he said, well, he told her that he was the meteorological officer on duty that night, that this pilot from the KLM plane came to his office for typical weather report before he took off over the Atlantic. And he said to Patsy, he said, I told that pilot that he should not take off now. For some reason, he didn't say why, but he told my cousin, he says, I tried and I tried and I tried to convince this pilot not to take off then, out over the Atlantic. And he didn't take, that was all he could say. He couldn't call anybody else higher authority. That was the way it worked.
His name was Captain Roloffs.
Oh, right, okay.
34 years of age.
Right.
Yeah.
And the pilot didn't take his advice. He took his weather chart, not this type of one, not this particular one, but similar, and took off. And of course, about an hour or so later, they disappeared over the Atlantic. And this uncle, who in our family, he was super duper mathematician, a saint, we all thought. He was my uncle, now not my dad. He took us to the confraternities, he got us all joined up. He was one of those people, as we knew, he almost went to church every day. But he told my cousin Patsy that he was tortured all his life thereafter because he never forgave himself for that. He felt the guilt that he did not convince that pilot not to fly. And the rest is history, you know. That,
I was just thinking, John, that very often.
The rest is history.
You know, I was just thinking, John, that very often when you see television programs on Ireland's worst air disaster, the one they actually cite is the Tusker Rock Vicon crash.
Very well.
And actually, they've actually got it wrong, because the two worst crashes, the Hugo de Groot, there was 99 passengers and crew lost in that one, and President Airways of 1961, there was almost 90 lost, just half a mile from Shannon Airport. So they keep making the mistake thinking it's the Aer Lingus Tusker Rock crash. Is the word. It's not. There's something that's been corrected. When I was talking to you earlier on, I was almost laughing at some of the stories that you were telling me as a young lad working in the hotels, the Cruises Hotel and the National Hotel, Glenport Hotel, and about the flight crews and the young men and women coming through. I suppose it was an education.
First, I think as an 11-year-old.
I think you received an education.
Not more than I ever expected. Most outstanding. They were all beautiful-looking women, and they were certainly liberated. And we used to have to do room service, and you'd go up there. They'd order for 3 or 4 people. You go up there to the rooms, and they're sitting there in their underwear, and you wouldn't know what way to look. You know.
Just a poor boy from down the country.
Exactly.
When myself and Vincent Power, the journalist Vincent Power, were starting to write the Rising Stars, which is the follow-on, which is the happy side to Falling Stars. We were speculating amongst ourselves as to the, for want of a better phrase, the social life of some of the crews. So I think you just confirmed what was really going on.
Oh, and they, you know, there were times when they were all the ladies, but there were times when the whole crews were in the room. And
ironically, John, we're talking here of the 1950s. Ireland was a very, very conservative
Absolutely.
I
mean,
sex didn't exist.
If you looked at a woman, you almost had to tell her that confession.
Yeah, those were the days.
That's right.
Those were the days. So look, John, it's been fantastic talking to you, and delighted that you could come here to the Flying Boat Museum. I think our original plan was to film the sequence at the old control tower in Shannon. Time is up. Time somehow came against us. Anyway, we're having such a good time at the Flying Boat Museum. If anybody wants to visit here, you will vouch for it yourself.
A lovely time. But I'll be back with more of my family. My brother, I of course learned to fly in my younger years, and my brother, he learned to fly, and so we were always close to it, you know, the whole flying business.
It's funny when the aviation bug hits you as a young guy.
It's
it
amazing.
Tends to stay with you forever.
Yeah.
Just one of those things. And so that's it. We're delighted that you came over, and it's brilliant to make the connection, and especially to one of the sadder stories in the Falling Stars book, which deals with the 1958 loss of the Dutch airliner, the Hugo de Groot, off the coast of Galway.
Yeah.
It only left Shannon a half hour before that.
Yeah,
so.
and I often wondered myself, you know, after my cousin told me this story, and I did all sorts of research at NTSB website, and wondered that my uncle must have been interviewed.
Yeah.
And why that is not on the record, you know. But in any event, that may be another day.
One of the great themes of writing Falling Stars is when I started out researching the book, which was just 15, 16 years ago, I was looking at it from a kind of a purely historical, forensic viewpoint, and really as time has rolled on, especially in these later years, when the book has come out and it's gone through its editions, the book is updating the whole time. Right. It's really, this is about human stories. It's.
I was doing my bit of research, and what next do I see on the internet? Only yourself talking about your book, and I said, that's it. I got on the internet, and I got onto the Ennis bookshop, and I ordered your book both of them, right there and then. And
Folks, you
And,
can't get a better
as a
endorsement than
pleasure.
that. John, listen, thanks very
Delighted.
much.
I love the books, and I will read. I need to reread them.
I think
You know,
should,
I need.
yeah. Over a glass of whiskey.
Yeah,
John,
whatever.
It's been a pleasure.
Same
very
here.
much,
Same
and,
here,
safe
Peter.
trip back.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Breathe.